Okay, I think I'll go ahead and get started. It's almost 4 after. So if you're gonna join, now is the time. This is gonna be, I think, a short quiz, if I remember correctly, when I set this up. It's just a few questions. Well, it's short in terms of the number of questions. I'll qualify this and say several of them are long, like you have a long time to solve them because there's quite a lot to look at. You know, some of this code can get complex. So, and a couple of these might be tricky. So, take your time, think it through. All right, let's go. All right, we are reviewing ORM part 2. Which annotation should be applied to the category field in the product class below, according to the diagram? All right, almost there. Okay, yeah, see, this is tricky. And I remember when I was a student, like trying to wrap my head around this and remember what. So here's the deal. It's many to one because the question said, look at the category field that's right here, that's in the product class, which is this diagram. What is its relationship? Like which tag would you put on here to relate it to category? This is the one that there would be many of for a given category. In this diagram, you could potentially have a many-to-many relationship here if you had multiple categories applied to a product. But in this case, this is showing that this is many products to one category. So it's a many to one. All right. Captain Banana. Which annotation should be applied to the products field in the category class below according to the diagram? Okay. Yeah, good. So if you were paying attention to the first question and my explanation of it, then, now we're talking about the converse, right? We have over here the category class with the products field. So this is the one that's one to many. Okay, good. All right. Let's go to the next question. The one to many annotation takes a parameter mapped by, what should its value be? Yeah, good. Okay, so let's talk about this. It's category, lowercase. And the way this works is if you are in the one side of things, in the one-to-many relationship, so we're talking about, the annotation that would go on this products field, you would say that it's mapped by the corresponding field in the other class category, because that's how they're linked. This is the one that has the many-to-one annotation. So that's pretty much the deal. Whichever one has the many-to-one annotation, that's the name. You want to use the name of the field as the value for that parameter or attribute. I don't know. Yeah, parameter mapped by. Okay. So that's the deal with that. You guys are creative with your names. All right, CRUD repository methods like find by ID that query the database return data already structured by its Java class. True or false? Yeah, that's false. And I told you some of these were tricky. So I'm not going to explain this too much because I have a couple more questions here that kind of relate to it. But there's a number of reasons why we use optional, and this is one of them. So yeah, I'll talk more about it in a second. Multi-select. And this is double points because it's a hard one. As used in the code below, what is made possible by the optional class? Oh, that code is hard to read. Let me see if I can make this bigger. Yeah, not so much.
We're able to click on it on our own screens to make it bigger.
Awesome. Yeah, so there's a full minute and a half for this one, so you can kind of think it through. Okay, so yeah, so let's let's talk this through. So looking at this code, I'll put it back up. Oop, there we go. Oh, it's going to block the whole thing. Yeah, it's all right. Okay, so let's talk about carries the data in a container from the database. So that's the purpose of an optional. It allows you to first kind of say, is there a result? Like, let's carry this back through the repository from the database in a container, and then just check and see if there's actually something there or not. So optional serves that purpose. It prevents errors if there is no data found for that artist ID. And that's true because if there wasn't, we could be past it, we wouldn't have all this logic that we're able to access, and we would possibly be passing the user to, something that is an error page. So we can actually handle, different situations, what might happen in that instance. Converts data received to an object of the Java class you specify. So this is kind of what I was talking about in the previous question, that when this first comes back, it does not yet have knowledge. It's just data, and it doesn't really know what structure it's supposed to have until it is matched up with the right class. So that's, this, when you declare this with the optional type, and specify this class, then it says, okay, I'm going to take all of the data that was in the columns in this table, and I'm going to match it up with, all the exact same field names, and then put it in this object. And then when I do, down here, artist equals result.get, it'll, already be prepared to be in that structure of that class. Okay. So the last one here, you can handle things differently if there's no data for that artist ID. Yeah, that's kind of goes along with handling things differently. So preventing errors was one thing, handling things differently is another, because, you might want to, route them a different way. You might want to pass in different information. So in this case, like if we have a result and we're actually going to filter things by the artist ID here, we're going to pass in only the artworks that belong to that artist and not all of the artworks that come from the artwork repository. So we're using some logic to handle this differently because of the information we were able to get from this. So where it is not directly involved is that query param artist ID being optional for the handler. What does that is putting required equals false on the annotation request param. That's what's responsible for that. It actually has nothing to do with the optional. And handling things differently if there was no query param, that's arguable. But generally speaking, you can handle that with the logic separately. In fact, yeah, this if block here just checks to see whether that's null or not, and that's before you use the optional. So that actually is completely separate. You're not really dealing with things with the optional until you get inside this and have already kind of evaluated whether it's there or not. Okay, so lots to think about there, but when I was a student, optional was kind of barely touched on. And I kind of realized I had to do, talk to my instructor and do a bunch of research, and finally he's like, yeah, this actually is important. So I wanted to make sure to cover it very thoroughly, as I am wont to do in all things. Okay, so, and our music quit on us. Okay, which of the following are not valid methods of the optional class? Correct, yeah. Save is actually a method of the CRUD repository interface and contains as, like Java. So yeah, is present and get are both methods of the optional class. Good. All right, let's see how you guys did. In third place, Shweta, nice job. And in second place, SK, and first place, we have Maple. Good job, Maple. Runners up are at Entity. I love it. And Brad S. Nice. Okay. And now I have to get my screen back because there we go. Okay. Oh boy, so many things to look at. All right, let me get myself straightened out here with all my window nonsense. Make sure I can access everything. Okay, so Colin is actually not here tonight, so I'm just going to launch straight into the slides. Tonight we're talking about ORM part 3, the last in this little series here. And quick announcements, then we'll do the lecture. And then for studio, just like last class, you're going to just work on your graded assignment or graded assignments if you're still catching up on 1 or 2, and have access to your TAs again for help with things. Okay, really the only announcement is just to remind you that all graded assignments are due by the end of the night on the 30th, Thursday the 30th, which is your last class. There's no lecture, but it's a catch-up class. And that is actually tonight you'll have what you need. I think that's left over from last class. You definitely still have, but part 4, you will actually be able to do part 4 after tonight, because it's just about the many-to-many relationship. Okay, so let's get into this. Okay. So we're going to talk about one-to-one, and we're going to talk about many-to-many, and that's pretty much it. So just to review the structure, we have, and I'm not going to do the exhibit thing. There's just no time. So you can kind of ignore that part. And there's more to the artwork details that we're going to create than this. There's new fields that we're going to be moving over in addition to these. But we'll do it all at once, so it doesn't really matter. I already set that part up. So the goal here is, we've already, I've already, connected artwork and artists with a many-to-one relationship. We did that in the last class. So now we're going to establish a one-to-one relationship between artwork and artwork details. That's a new class we're going to create. If you did your prep work, it's very similar to the way that Chris takes you through event and event details. And then we're going to, tackle a many-to-many relationship between artwork and style, so that we can have multiple styles attached to an artwork, just like we, a style can have multiple artworks. And that's going to take a lot of refactoring. And I'm going to do it differently than the way that Chris handled things for the events project, the coding events project, because the way that he does it is only one of many ways to handle it. And the way that I'm planning to do it is actually going to be more similar to the way that you do it in your graded assignment. So I thought that would be helpful. And then the last little thing to say here about this is, let's see if that's going to go to my next slide. Yeah. I love that you guys gave me so much artwork to work with. It's fantastic, but it was a lot of data to have to convert with CSVs to try to get it all in there. And I had some issues. So to that end, I didn't have time to prepare the data in the other database structures that we are going to be, doing leading up to the final product. So what I've done is I actually currently have the solution running, my solution branch running, so that it matches this database. And I'll just give you a sneak preview of where we're headed. But I'm also going to show you some of the things that I did that were not there the last class that are going to be there in the starter code. So you can kind of understand where we're picking up, because I've done, some work ahead of time. So let's take a look at this. And by the way, look at all this amazing artwork, guys. Isn't this cool? And the link for this is in the slides. So in the PDFs. So you can come and look at this and look at them, up close. I love this one. It's so cool. Oh, I gotta double click, I guess. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, you can come in here and, look at all these. It's really, really beautiful stuff. So yeah, I encourage you to take a look at what your classmates are doing. And there may or may not be a couple of mine in here too. Okay, so here is our app. We have a whopping 38 pieces of artwork now in our little collection. I decided just so that they would not be ordered by artist, I ordered them by their title when I set the IDs in my CSV. But that's okay, because it's going to give us a chance to kind of see things mixed up a little bit. So we have this artworks page, and of course, add artwork and delete artwork. I've done some work on add artwork because we have a lot more information now. And I, used a little bit of the Bootstrap classes that work with Grid and Fluxbox to lay things out very easily with, just containers, rows, and columns. That's pretty much all you need. So you can investigate that in the template if you would like to kind of see how that all works when you look at the code later. But where we're headed is to have this ability here. And it looks like I lost my title here, my label. That's okay. These are all of the different styles that you could choose from, and you could potentially, choose more than one. So that's where we're headed. For now, you're going to see that, it's going to be like it was last time, where there's a drop down. So that's that. And then of course, artists looks the way that it did before, and you can view artworks just from one artist. That's kind of something we did during class, so that you've seen that. But styles, I went ahead and I converted I converted the enum that we had before that just had that static list of styles into a class and actually have the data for that. So all the different styles that kind of came out of all the artwork that I was given now has this. And one of the things we're going to be doing when we do our many-to-many relationship is enabling us to actually view artwork by the style. So we can see everything that's in, each one of these categories. Some of them have more than others. This one has one. And where's the, oh yeah, the figure painting. Okay, so these are super cool. Yeah, I love this one, the Goblin chess set. This is super cool. And you also will see that I have added a details page. So this is, actually independent of the artwork details class. You can do this already just with the stuff that I've put into the artwork class, because that's all that's passed in here is a piece of artwork. And so it doesn't matter that we're going to be moving some of those fields to another class and then encapsulating it as part of the artwork. But yeah, so there's a lot of, cool things here going on, and we are going to code it. So I'm trying to think if there's anything else I wanted to point out about some of the changes that I made. I guess I can just kind of show you. Well, I'm going to want to change my branch back. So let me do this. Git checkout class 18. Go to the live demo branch. Okay, so now we are going to see that things are a little bit different. I've got some to-dos in here. But you can see that I have definitely added things from last time. We have the style controller. Style is no longer an enum, it's a class over here. And it just has a name and a list of artworks, because I have gone ahead and added a one-to-many relationship just so I could go ahead and work with it a little bit. And then we're just going to modify that to make it many-to-many and kind of walk through what those changes look like. And then, of course, there's that artwork details page that I mentioned. I went ahead and set that up, and you can see that, if the artwork class has all these additional things, we had year created before, but we've got description, width, height, and depth, and I think media and image ID, I think we had before. But there's some new stuff in here, but it's also right now it's part of the artwork class. And this details page is just getting, everything directly from the artwork. And you remember that when this was an enum, it was style.displayName, but now that it's actually a class with a relationship to artwork, it's just style.name. I've got, some things in here, like we want to display the dimensions differently, depending on whether there's a third dimension or not. There's some logic involved in that. So I actually wrote a little instance method down here at the bottom, way at the bottom, that called get dimensions, that just basically says, okay, format each part like this. And then I've got a little ternary expression here with the question mark and the colon to say, if the depth is greater than 0, if there is, in fact, a real depth, then, format it this way, otherwise just return an empty string. And then we just return the entire thing together as a single string. And that way the template just gets that result. And we don't, because trying to do that in a template would kind of be a little bit of a nightmare. I mean, I think technically it could be done, but it would be a nightmare. So we're going to kind of see how all of this is going to work as we move through this. Does anybody have any questions about anything before I get started on the new content? Like, what did you do? Why did you do it? And I don't blame you if you're a little bit lost. There's a lot going on here. But as you have seen through this coding events project that Chris has been leading you through, these types of applications do get complex. There's a lot going on. And your graded assignment is the same way. So, we're working toward trying to help you work within this level of complexity. All right. So now that we've got our starter code, I'm going to, come over here and get back to our slides, and we're just going to talk through these concepts, but we really are going to spend the majority of our time in the code because it's easier to talk through what's really going on when we're doing the code than, words on a slide when it comes to this stuff. But I still have some bullet points. Okay, so for a one-to-one relationship, the first thing you do to set the relationship is, of course, in the model. So in the primary class, and when I say primary and secondary, let me actually go back to, no, okay, hold on, hold please, there we go. Nope, not quite. Okay, when I say primary and secondary, I basically mean everything really revolves around artwork. We can kind of treat that as our primary class. And artist and style are just those objects are encapsulated inside artwork. So I'm considering those to be secondary. And then same thing here, this is encapsulated inside here. So these are all really secondary to artwork, which is primary. So you're going to see me use this terminology, primary and secondary, a lot on these slides in a very generic way, so that it kind of applies to anything. But for our project, that's what I'm referring to. Artwork is primary. Okay, so with that in mind, let's get back to this. So in the artwork model, for example, that's being the primary class, we're going to need to add a field to have the type of the other class. And we will need to, this is of course after we've created it, which we have not yet, but we will. And then we use a one-to-one annotation, not surprisingly, since we're talking about one-to-one relationships. But you also are going to be giving it this attribute cascade, and give that a value of cascade.all. And what that does for you is it allows in the controller, you don't really have to make any changes, because JPA is going to basically say, okay, you want to save everything to the database that's part of this object. And normally, it's only going to save things that are primitives. So like the title, because it's a string, right? Anything like that. But if you have something that's actually an object that's a property of the primary class, it's not going to do it unless you enable this cascade feature. And this is great because we're not going to have to save them separately. We just have to save, the artwork, and then boom, it's all going to cascade down into the individual tables, and everything will just flow. It's pretty great. But you've also see this at valid. That's kind of a secondary thing, similar, where it will validate all of the primitives, but it's not going to automatically validate anything inside those other classes that are defined in those other models, unless you put this on the actual field that, is where that's defined. So if you put this on it, it basically says, okay, pass this down, go down into the artwork details entity. And if it has any sort of validation, annotations on its fields, make sure you include those too. And then there's some additions to the constructor and getters and setters, of course, as you add some of these things. And then on the other side of things, you don't actually need a controller for this entity if it's just going to represent additional information to the primary object. So, and if you've got that cascade attribute, you actually probably don't even need to update the controller at all. So in the view for the primary entity, you're going to want to do a couple things. Mostly it's really just making sure all of your references to any properties that you previously had, like we were looking at, that are like artwork.description or artwork.imageID, that those are then updated so that they're actually referenced from the new object that's part of artworks. And this is going to make more sense when we get into it in a second. And we've gone too far. Okay, so let's jump over to code and we'll get this done. And I'm going to make good use of my to-do list here. Oh, but I have not yet opened this all up. So pardon me while I do this. Looks like a lot, yo. It's because it is. This is pretty much all we're going to be doing today. All right, I'll get them. But I did do like last time, I labeled them 1 and 2 so I can tell them apart, because often they're both in the same file. Different stages, right? Okay, so part 1 in artwork, we've got some different things going on. So we need to create an artwork details class, and then we will be able to actually create a field here for that. So let's go over to models. Here we go, models, and I'm going to create a new class and call it artwork details. Okay. As with all other things that we need tables for, we're going to tag this as an entity. And we're also going to extend abstract entity so that we can have that ID automatically provided for. And then we really just need a name. And I'm going to make sure that I am looking at the right thing here. So hang on. Just don't want to miss anything. Okay, yeah. So we just need, I'm sorry, we don't need a name. We're only going to be copying over the things that we're pulling out of artwork. So we really just need to start grabbing stuff. So the first instruction here is move the 7 properties that are below here into that class. So media, your created description with height, depth, and image ID. We're going to take all of this with us. So I'm just going to cut them, boom, and take them over here and paste them. And then we're going to need, of course, to set up a constructor for that, but let's go ahead and fix this one up. We're going to take these 7 out. Same here. Remove all of these from here so that only title, artist, and style are left. And that's, nice and clean. And keep in mind, we haven't set up that many-to-many relationship yet. So this is just style singular for now, right? And it's just style. Okay. So we have some getters and setters we need to move. We might as well just copy those over. So I'm going to grab them all these getters and setters. Description, media, there we go. All right. And we're going to take those over. But let me actually just create this constructor first. Why? Oh goodness. All my fingers in the wrong place. Okay. And then of course, with any entity, we also have to have that no arg constructor. So I'm going to add that as well. Yeah, that's required for Hibernate to do its thing. Okay, and so now I can paste in all the getters and setters that go along with this. There is at least one more thing for us to do. Let me double check these. Yeah, add a new field, details. Yeah, so we need a new field here to represent that. So we're going to say private artwork details. Oops, there we go. And I'm just going to call it details because it's artwork dot details. And so it's a little bit less cumbersome than artwork dot artwork details. So I'm just simplifying it a little bit. And that is just going to be, forgive me, I'm blanking for a second. We're just going to, we're not going to initialize it to anything because we want to add it to our constructor and allow it to be, a comma there, artwork, nope, details. Good heavens. Okay, I'm having a day. Okay, good. And then here we can, details equals details. Great. And then down at the bottom, we're going to just have a setter, a getter and a setter for this, sorry. Right underneath style. So I'll do getter and setter, choose this. Perfect, and that's all we need. You'll notice we've got a couple things going on down here. One is that there's this toString method that we wrote, and you might remember we used this as a quick way to give us this information from this class on an object in the delete, all those checkboxes in the delete form. So we do need to update this. And so now we actually have details.year created, but we're going to use the getter, of course, now because it's in another class. So this is updated. It's able to pull it from details now. So that's cool. We're done with that. Let me start deleting these so we can keep track of what we've done and what we haven't. Okay. And then okay. And then down at the bottom here, we have another one that says move this to artwork details. And that makes sense because these are now fields of the artwork details class. So we're going to want to call this instance method from there. So I'm going to pull all that out and go down here at the very bottom. I will add this instance method back in. Okay, and now it's happy because this is where width and height and depth live. Okay, so we're doing good. So we've taken care of the classes, both of these classes. We've got everything in good shape, except I haven't added my annotation. So we're going to want to do that. Annotations. So one-to-one goes on here. And this is where we add that cascade equals cascade type dot all. Very first thing that popped up there. And then we also are going to add that valid to make sure that, because if you look over in here, we've got annotations on both year created and on image ID saying that those cannot be blank, they're required. So we need to make sure that those are validated by proxy essentially. And so that's what this does for us is say, pass it on. Make sure that over in the controller, where we are, making sure that everything is validated that's part of this model binding for that entire artwork object. Make sure you include things that are of the artwork details class as well. Okay, so that's what that does. So we're good. So now we just need to go look at these places in the view where we have some references that need to be updated. So let's tackle these one at a time. Actually, let's start with the index file. Okay. So this is just the file that displays all of the artworks, right? And we have a couple of things here that, some of these are fine. ID is fine, title is fine, artist is fine. All of those are still part of artwork, but year created is not. So we're going to add a dot details in here. And I'm just going to copy this because we're just going to be pasting it in a lot. And so there's another ID, but there's an image ID, and that is something that we moved. So I'm going to paste that in there as well. So it can now access it through that details object. Okay, so that's good. Let's do the next one. I'll take my to-do out here and head on to, now let's do the add form. Okay, so we got to go through this kind of input field by input field. Title is cool, artist is cool. Is there anything at the top? Hold on, just gonna make sure. Yeah, we're good. Year created needs to be updated. So I'll paste it in there and there. And then media needs to be updated. So I'll put it there. Width, height, and depth, of course, are all going to need to be updated. Remove those two. And then description and image ID. So, we moved so many of these to this, other secondary class, but they're still all part of the same, form. We're still going to collect the information all at a time, bundle it all together when it comes through our post handler in the controller, and then save it all at once, and it will cascade down. Okay, is there anything left here? Style.name. Yeah, that's all the same for now. We'll replace some of this later when we turn this into checkboxes instead of a select. I think we've gotten everything here that needs to be here. So I'm going to take this out. We will certainly find out if I'm wrong. And now we'll go to this one. Okay, so now we're in the details file. This is the new file that I created to just, kind of give us a nice, easy way to look at all the details of a particular object. And so we've got several things here. One is this image ID. So we're going to update that to make sure that it pulls the image from the right place. You'll notice up here, this takes care, this artwork to string, this is taking care of giving us, again, the same thing we were looking at before. It's the title, the artist, and the year, right? And they're all kind of concatenated together. But I found that I did have to use this explicitly here for some reason. And I'm not sure why, but yeah, maybe I didn't in the long run and I was having a different issue, but that's what I did for now. So here's another one, description, media, and get dimensions. We moved that as well. That's that instance method that depends on, pulling together width and height and possibly also depth. So that's it for that one. We should be in good shape. And so now, oh, there's one other thing I wanted to mention that is only relevant kind of in the big picture in terms of you beginning to think like a web developer. I changed this. You may recall that previously I had this image linked to where, is that true in this file? Not in this file, over in the artworks index. Yeah, where it's displaying everything. I had this linked before, both of these, to the Google, link, to where it was actually taking you to the Google file out, and it was taking you away from your website, and something that people generally do not want is for you to be taken, for the users to be taken away from your website. You want to try to keep them there as much as possible. And that's one of the values of having this page. Now, this matters slightly less because this is kind of a backward facing, inward facing website that we're creating. It's an administrative portal. But, on the flip side, if you are having a user, like public facing thing, that kind of thing becomes really important. So it's just something to think about. I made, that was a very intentional change on my part to make sure that I was linking this. I linked it up here as well so that, where is it? Here, yeah. So that the title also is linked, but either one of these, if you click on them, it takes you to the same place, which is the details page, which is what we were just looking at here. Okay, so I think we have all of our to-do number ones set. However, I cannot demonstrate this for you and because of the yeah, it was a nightmare trying to get some of that stuff in. I finally figured it all out, but I'm going to not drop all my tables, and then there's 5 of them. So I'm going to keep going, and we're going to talk about many-to-one, and we'll get the style stuff converted over to many-to-many relationship. And then we will test it all and make sure it's all working the way we expect, just because otherwise I'd have to keep dropping and refilling all these tables. Okay, so now let's talk about many-to-many. So the idea here is that not only do 2 different classes have knowledge of each other, they can keep track of all of the different ones that have that relationship. So in the model for the primary class, which in our example, of course, is artwork, we want to, either create or update a field. In our case, we'll be updating it because I already have a singular style. So we're going to make it a list instead. We'll add this many-to-many annotation. We don't want to initialize it or mark it as final because we want to be able to use it through the constructor. So we will, make changes to the constructor and getters and setters just to make everything work with it being a list instead of just a string. Or I'm sorry, an object of the style class as it currently exists. But the style class has to be updated as well. And so if we don't already have it, we'll need a field. We actually do already have, because we had set a one-to-many relationship in the style class, which I can show you here. We already have this one-to-many relationship, right? So we really just have to update this, still using this list of artworks to be many-to-many so that it matches with, the other side so that they can communicate properly. So the mapped by attribute stays. We still need to connect back to the attribute that's in the, to the field that's in the other class. But we're going to have to update it for this one. If we're going to set styles as, the new field in artwork, then we have to update this to be styles as well, right? Not just style singular, which is what it currently is. So, kind of have to think about both sides of this thing, making sure that they match. That's the goal here. And then once we do that, oh yeah, and then if there's not a getter, you would need one of those for this. But in this particular instance, it depends on how you set things up. In some instances, and I think that includes what Chris was doing with coding events, he was using things differently, and I think he might have had to have a setter for that as well. But this is going to be a lot more like it already was, where Hibernate just does the work for us. It just, manages that list, by just populating it from the database without us having to actually manually add things to it. Just because of the way that I'm planning on using these relationships for this particular project. So you kind of just have to make these decisions based on what the needs are. So what happens is that once you set that relationship, you end up with this special table in the database called a join table. And it is exactly what it sounds like. It basically just says, okay, I know that this entity over here has a relationship with this entity, vice versa. And there might be multiple relationships that they have. So this thing, basically allows for multiple combinations of the IDs of each of them. So our primary table artworks ID and our secondary table styles ID will be able to, coexist here. And some of them have multiple ones. You can see down here, artworks ID 5 actually has a relationship with both 1 and 4 from the styles table. So this is just a way for it to, make those relationships happen, because we can't, you can't do multiple things in a single cell in one of these tables. So this basically joins it together. So we have our artworks table, we have our styles table, and this is the join table. And it's named usually by combining the two entities. So you can see up here, this one's named artwork_styles to indicate that it's a combination. It's where these two meet with their many-to-many relationship. And you'll notice, neither of these has columns for the list. So like if we go over and look at let's see, artwork table, there is nothing for the styles here. And if we look at the style table, there's nothing here. We haven't set this relationship yet, but even if we did, there would be nothing here. So we can, kind of take a look at that later. But the join table is it's going to look like this once we get the relationship in place. This is what's going to be that ties it all together and allows multiple relationships in both directions. Because you can definitely tell there's multiple artworks that all have the same styles if you look at this column. So it works both ways. All right. Let's see. Do I want to keep going, or do I want to just do this part? Let's just do this part. And then we'll come back to the slides. There's a little more involved here. Okay, so again, we're going to start our primary entity, which is artwork. And right here where we have style, we're going to change this to be a list of styles. I have noticed that this thing is always suggesting the wrong one first, so always pay attention to this and make sure you choose the right one. In this case, we want the one from java.util. Okay, and it's going to be a list of style objects, and so we'll call it styles now. And we're going to change this annotation now to many to many. And then we will update everything elsewhere. So just like we have a list of styles here, we're going to need a list of styles here. And the styles equals styles. And then our getters and setters, what might actually be faster here is just to delete these and yeah, have it, there we go. Have it regenerate them for us. So that everything is lists of styles and styles, not style. And we'll get to this part later. This has to do with stuff we need for the view. So we'll come back to that. So we've gotten this part done. We've changed the relationship to many. We have updated the constructor, getter, and setter. Okay, I'm going to take that off. And then we'll flip over to the style class, and you can see here, it's got the name and it's got this list of artworks that already exist. So we just need to make sure there is a reciprocal relationship that makes sense for the way that it has been set in artwork. And then of course, change this to be styles now because it's a list, not a single style. But this part all stays the same. We're good. And I think, yeah, it's not in the constructor. It doesn't need to be because Hibernate handles it. And there's just this getter, and it was already set the way we need it to be. So we're good. So we can do that. And then let's talk about what happens in the controllers. And then we'll come back to this other to-do here when we get into the templates, which are, good heavens, this isn't scrolling, but I guess it's because that's all there is. Yeah, that's all there is. Good. Okay. All right. So let's just talk about it a little bit and then we'll code it out. So on the controller side of things, your many-to-many relationship will require tweaks, but probably not to the secondary controller. All that really does is handle the page where you view the styles or add the styles, and that part doesn't really change because that table is already managing itself. But your primary controller is where everything comes together. So that's probably going to need some work. So one of the things we're going to do is pass IDs of the secondary class as a query parameter to add so that we will be able to have that looked up the same way. Like, let me actually, it's going to just be easier to explain the code. Yeah. So to handle the user selections on the add form, we're going to want to, when they make their selections, because they're making multiple selections, we're going to want to pull that through a style IDs. And this is exactly what we did on the delete handler, right? If we come down here, we did the exact same thing by just cycling through those and saying, okay, delete all of the artworks IDs. Now, the way we handle this is going to be a little bit different because of the way that we're retrieving things from the database first, and we're going to have to evaluate some things. But we'll do that, and then we want to say if there's no errors and this ID param is present, which it's not required, but if it's present, then we want to use the CRUD repository method, find all by ID. So this is new. You haven't used this one before, but it's fantastic because it allows you to just pull in all the IDs into a nice little object and then pass it right to the other class. So it's going to allow you to get all of the objects that are associated with those style IDs. So all the style objects that match. And then you'll use the setter from the primary class, the artwork class, and say, okay, just set all of these now into that list, right? And boom, it happens. Because we have that entire thing already coming in through the model binding here. And we can just tap right into that and then set it in, and as long as we do that so that that object now has that information on those style objects before we actually save the entire artwork to the artwork repository, we're good. So it just has the sequencing is what's important here. You want to make sure that you do it if the style IDs were passed in, you do it here before you do this part. Yeah, and then you just save the entire object. So it's a really smooth setup, gotta say. And then we'll talk about let's do this because this is a little bit of work, and then we'll talk about the view and some of the changes we're going to make there. Okay, so none of this is going to actually matter until we have a view because we have to set up the boxes and everything. We don't really have to change anything we're doing, by the way, to the the get mapping for this, because we're already passing in the styles from the style repository. I had set that up ahead of time when I replaced the enum. And that doesn't change. Again, that table manages itself. What really has to change here is the way that we're interacting with the artwork object, because the style object is now a part of it. And we want to be able to wrap it all up in one big bundle before we save it to the artwork repository, and then let it, cascade down to the other tables. Okay, so let's do the query param. This is getting long, so I'm gonna do this, and I'm gonna choose this errors object always has to come right after this, so I'm gonna actually do it here. And I could put it after model too, then it doesn't really matter, but I'll just do at, and this is going to be a query param, so we're going to say request param. And this is going to be a list of integers. And it did not take, so there we go. A list of integers, and we're just going to call it style IDs. And then we just make sure that we use that same name in the view, in the template, so that it'll match up. Okay, so that part's done. And then let's add this logic and think this through. So it says, if, let me put it here. If the style IDs are passed in, and of course, it's also if there's no errors, right? So we already have that logic in place, but that just is meant to say, make sure you put it in this else block, because obviously it doesn't make sense to do this unless we're sure that there's no errors and we're going to move on and actually save something to the database. So here we will go ahead and put another if block, because we have to check to see if the style IDs were there in the first place, because if they aren't, there's nothing to save. And we can just move on and save the artwork object as it came in from the form with all the other information that was added in. So we'll say if, and then style IDs is not null. And as a reminder, the reason that we're using integer here and not int is so that we can do this, because there's no such thing as a null int. You can only have a null integer. So we use that wrapper class to handle this logic right here. Okay, so now we are saying there's two things that we need to do. First, we need to look up the style objects, and you're about to learn some new syntax. And I'm gonna get my solution in front of me so I make sure I don't screw this up. It's not something I have done very often. Make sure I know where I am. Here I am. Okay. Yeah. All right. So we don't need to use an optional. And the reason for that is because if this style ID exists, I mean, we know it exists because it comes from the database and it had something associated with it already. So we're going to trust that it's safe, and we're just going to go ahead and put it into a list. But there's a catch. There's this other thing called an iterable that is a type and I'm going to call this selected styles to make it real clear here that we're talking about what the user selected. But basically, when you bring something back, like if I just do this and say style repository dot find all by ID, this is that new method I was telling you about. There we go. And I give it style IDs. It can look up multiple. You notice there's a problem here, right? So I'm going to hover over this. And it says it requires a type list, because that's what I said I wanted, but it's providing an iterable. And so that's a different type of a different way. It has its own methods. So we actually can get away with this by casting. So we're just going to say, remember this casting is just put parentheses right in front of this and say, okay, I really do want this to be a list of styles. And once you do that, it's happy because it will bring this back in as an iterable, but then convert it to a list of styles. And then that matches what we typed this variable to be. Okay, so that's what's going on there. And now we have selected styles. We have a whole list of objects that is exactly what matches the type. Like if you go over to the artwork thing, this styles property is a list of styles. So we can now save this directly into this object because it matches the type. That's what's happening. So that's step one, is to go get them. Step two is to save them into the artwork object. So we're just going to say artwork, and we're going to call the setter set styles, and just pass it selected styles. And that's it, boom. So we started off just to follow this through, because there's a lot going on here, and I understand it's hard to keep track of what is what, all these different objects, right? This, you remember we've been doing this part for a while. This is model binding, and this means that we don't have to have all of these different request params for all of these different query parameters for every single field that's a part of artwork. We can just bundle it all together and say, as long as all of the things match from the template, we can make it all one object. And that object includes a styles thing. It's just empty, it doesn't have anything assigned to it yet. So we say, okay, so if they gave us some styles, then now we can, pull those out using the IDs that we got, which you will see once we kind of how those are set once we put them on the template. And then once you've grabbed all the correct style objects, go ahead and just set it into that artwork object that came in, and we're just going to tack that on at the last second. And then we come back out here and follow through with saving the entire artwork to the artwork repository. And again, because over in here, we said that we wanted this to cascade. Oh, sorry, that's the wrong one. No, this one actually doesn't need cascading overtly. You don't have to be explicit about it. It will automatically carry down. So let's get back to the controller. Yes. Okay. So we have now done all this part. I'm going to take these to-dos out. And for now, for the functionality we need, we're pretty much done with the controller. So now we need to go over and look at this template. And really what we're concerned with here is this, well, there's two things. I don't see the other one. Oh, yeah. Oh, we have to do that. Yeah, maybe I forgot to put the to-dos in the other template, but the add form, I did. I forgot to put the to-dos in. Okay, so there should be to-dos right here to say that we are going to change this out and no longer use the select and use some checkboxes. That's the word I'm looking for instead. So let me make sure I get the right thing here. Yeah, okay. So here we go. We need, now that we have made the controller set up to handle this, we need to actually put it in a template. So the user has the checkboxes. So we still have styles coming in, right? Because before we were looping over these option tags to make sure each one was a different style from the list of styles. So we're still going to use that. We're still going to, loop through and create checkboxes instead. And we'll use a lot of these, same values here and things. We're just going to have to shift it a little bit. So I'm going to leave the label in, which I did not do in my solution sketch before. Whoops. And this time I'm going to convert this. Instead of a select, I'm just going to make it a TH block, which is that nice handy dandy kind of blank container that gives us a way to wrap something that we want to, identify a certain way. And this is where I'm actually going to put out, hold on. Do I want to do that? Yeah. I might just code this out separately. Okay, let's undo that. And I'm just gonna code the whole thing here because there's enough differences. I might as well. It's gonna be a pain to try to just edit it. Okay, so I'm gonna put the TH each on this block so that we can say everything inside this, whatever tags it is going to be, new for each one of these. And this is just, style from styles. So this is where we're, basically doing what we did before here with the options, but we're going to do it for everything that's inside this now. And I'm going to give each of the checkbox needs its own label. So I'm just going to kind of do that. And then I'm going to say input type equals checkbox. And then we're going to give it the name style IDs. And this is important. Every single checkbox needs to have the same name so that it's understood that they're a group. And that's why it's able to give you a list of those IDs because of this name. So that's very important. And then, of course, TH value, and this is going to be the same way that it is up here, where we just use style.id. And that's coming from, this loop. So each one of these styles that are possible that they can choose from is going to be defined by this input. And then for the label, I'm going to just use a span to kind of not have it have any formatting to do the text so that we can make the text dynamic. And this will be style.name. So this is, essentially the same thing we were doing right here, actually. Yeah. And it will, go ahead and put whatever that value is there. Okay, let's see if I forgot anything. Nope. I don't think so. Everything, but I do have to take out the select. We don't want that there anymore. Okay. Everything else should be set, and it should, because of this formatting with the rows and columns that I used for these bootstrap classes, this should be in the same place that the select was before. Okay, so that works for that. And that means that we have everything we need for the add form to work for the entire artwork object. But there's a couple more things we want to do. And both of these things, one of these things has to do with filtering and the other one has to do with making a change to the details page, which I also apparently failed to put to-dos on. But we're going to want to change the way the style is being listed here. Yeah, here. Because we're going to list all the styles, right? So we're going to do this also. Okay. We can actually make this work as long as we don't try to come to this to the details page. This actually should all work now. So let's go see if we have any errors before we add these last couple of things. What's happening? I need to get back on my other. That's interesting. Nothing's happening. Oh, this is not good. It was running for 3 hours and now it's unhappy. All right, guys.
Running for 3 hours makes me unhappy too.
Most of solution. Okay, I'm gonna shut this down and terminate it because I can't seem to get it to stop myself. This is bad. I may have to I don't want to force quit it. Oh. Okay, let's talk through the rest of the slides and while we're waiting for that to happen, let's just do that. You've seen now kind of how I intended to use it, right? I decided that I wanted to have a bunch of checkboxes on the form. That's a totally different approach than what Chris did with the coding events project. He actually decided to have a separate form that would allow you to add a tag one at a time. But I decided I wanted to make it possible to just use a bunch of checkboxes, pick them all, and boom, they just get added. So in this approach where we did it, we needed to pass down that entire list. And that part was already done in this case, because I had set up styles that way before. And of course, if you have a details page, you want like a user-friendly list. That's one of the things we haven't done yet. So we're going to add an instance method to format that string so that it'll have a nice comma separated list of any of the styles. And because we have to do a little extra work because those are objects and they have a name property, each one of them. So it's not as easy as just like, using .join like you would if it was just an array of strings or something. And then, of course, we want to do like we did for artists and make it possible to filter on that list of styles. So we're going to do that. But again, you might be doing something completely different, and you might need different things in your controllers and different things in your templates, depending on what you want to do. So, you know, we're kind of covering a couple different approaches with these different projects for you, so you can get pictures of how this might look for different use cases. Okay, and there's my studio thing. So we really need to finish this. Whoa. I don't want to do this, but I am. Really, really don't want to do this. I have autosave on, so I'm not worried about saved changes. Okay. All right, let me go reopen it, guys. Give me just a sec. Let's see. To rebuild it. Okay. Everything is as we left it. So I'm just going to start it up. We'll go take a look. All right. Hibernate doing its thing. Tomcat, good, there we are. All right, so we'll close this. So let's refresh this. We have all of our wonderful things. So this is good. This is working. So far, so good. Let's try, oh, well, we can't go to the details page yet. Let's go to this add form, and we have an issue. Okay, so this is where we're gonna, you know, figure out what's going on here. Template. It's having trouble processing the template. Oh, image ID is not readable. Oh, I may have missed a reference. So let's take a look. I think we're already here. Yes, let's take a look here. Ooh. Details.image ID. Yep, I missed one. Good. Okay, let's restart. Okay, good. Yeah. So here we go. So now we have this nice list of checked boxes. Let's try adding something. I'm just going to say some title. And oh, yeah, by the way, let's make sure all of our validation is working. I'm going to try to submit. Oh, I forgot to put the, okay, I know what I did. I forgot to put the not required on here. The required equals false. So let's find this. Yeah. Okay. Required equals false. There it is. All right, restart. This is how we debug. It's always something, isn't there? I remember this white label error page stressed me out when I was a student, big time, because it's like a wall of text. It was like reading legalese. I hate legalese. And I was just like, oh my God, how do I, you know, handle this? I know how to read this stuff fairly well now. And so I'm not so, I don't panic like I used to. You'll get there, I promise you will. Okay, so let's try this again. I'm gonna try add artwork. Yeah, so now we get our validation. And you can see that because we put that at valid on the details in the artwork entity, we actually are seeing that the image ID and the year created are being validated, which is what we needed. So that definitely is working. So I'm just going to put some really basic information in here. Some art that is cool. Okay, and then we'll select Chris, sure. And we'll say, you know, 1982. I don't know. Chris, were you even alive in 1982? And then the only other thing I need here is an image. And I don't have an image, so I'm just going to do that. So we have already determined that this works fine if we don't have anything selected. So let's go ahead and choose a couple of things, and we'll just say digital illustration and I don't know, cartoon. Sure. And now we have another issue. So let's check this out. Primary key. Oh, duplicate entry 1. I forgot about this. Okay, so I did not find a way to fix this in time. I was messing around with this before class. If you see this happen to you, here's what's happening. It's creating these sequence tables. If you've looked at these, it basically says, here's what the next ID is going to be if you create another object of this table. And it says 51, but for whatever reason, it was trying to assign it with 1. Oh, that was the artwork details. So it's the artwork detail sequence. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, now it says 51. Oh, that's funny. So anyway, I don't know what's going on, but it's because I used a CSV and actually like brought in all of my ID numbers and used 1 through 38. It's now complaining. So I'm sure there's a fix. I've looked into this issue of how it jumps from like, 1 to 51 and to 101 to 151. And I found surprisingly very little online, despite excessive searching. And I saw a couple of places like forums where people were asking about it and no one was answering. So it's definitely an issue for some people. What fixes I did, see fixes were not fixes for me. So I really don't know what to do about it. But this did not happen to me last time I used Java, so I'm not really sure what's going on with it. Anyway, so I can't add anything because of that. But if I could, it looks like everything was otherwise going to work just fine. Because it got to the point where it was communicating with database. It was trying to save it. So, right there, that at least the form works, right? Okay, so let's go ahead and I'm gonna stop this. Let's make these last changes. It is almost 7 o'clock, guys. This is why I'm glad I have longer lecture time now. Okay, there's a lot to talk about. There's actually more that I wanted to talk about tonight, and definitely not going to get into it. Okay, so what are we doing? I should look at my to-dos. I'm like, starting to lose it. I gotta expand these again. Okay, all right. So the first thing is we want to be able to display something nice on that details page. And so we kind of need a way to format the styles. I'm going to copy and paste this because I need to, save time. So, but it's not going to look entirely unfamiliar to you because we've used string builder before. I'm basically setting a string builder so that I can loop through all of the styles and get the name out of the style objects as I loop through, and then just append them onto this string builder. And then as long as it's not the last one, I'm also appending a comma and a space. So it basically, approximates the whole thing that join does when you have something nice and simple, like a list of strings. But we just have to do a little extra work because we have to dig in with the getter here to get the name out of the styles object. And then I, of course, return the stringified version of the string builder because this is in fact not a string, it's a string builder. So we do that, and now we have a nice string, nicely formatted. So what we need to do on the details page for that, goodness, what did I do? Oh, I see. We need to come down here where this says artwork.style. And instead of that, we don't want to tap into the style class at all. We want to actually just use this directly and say, get formatted style. And it should be able to do the work on the instance, of that particular artwork object to pull in the information we want, which is, of course, accessing this list of styles that we have now up here and getting those names out of it. So let's restart this and check out just this portion. We should be able to go to a details page without an error now. Okay. So if I go back over to artworks, and I click on either the image or the thing, I get an error. Okay, get formatted style. Oh, it doesn't like it. Okay, let me double check my template in my solution, see if I did something different. Oh, for the love. That's not it. This is it. Get formatted styles. Oh, I think I might have just had a typo. Yeah, it's styles plural, not style singular. You know, sometimes it's just the little things, isn't it? Again, this is why I've learned not to panic when I see the white label error page, because sometimes it's just stupid stuff like that. Okay, so let's come back and refresh this. Yeah, and now we see this beautiful, super realistic charcoal and pastel drawing that Alex did. Okay, so and this one was a bad thing to choose because it only has one. So let's actually go back and find one that has multiple. I'm trying to remember if I know. I know. Yeah, I know this one does. Good. So realism, comma, space, pencil illustration. And you can imagine if there were more, it would continue with a nice little, comma and space separated list. So that's what that did for us. Is it, put this into a very user-friendly way to present that, multiple names associated with this particular object. And that's why we set the many-to-many relationship. Okay, so now let's do this the other way around. And go to the styles page, and we have this, view all artwork in this style, which I don't remember adding. Oh, I guess I did already do that. Okay, then what was it? Let's see. Wow, guys, not firing on all cylinders tonight. Yeah, so apparently that was already done. Oh, of course it was already done. No, not of course. I guess I just did it and didn't realize that I did it. Or something. I'm tired. I don't know. But here it is. Yes. The column is here. You can see it. It's possible that I accidentally added it into this branch and didn't mean to. But yeah, so we've got this here where we're saying, just like we did with artists, take the style ID, use it as a query param, and filter this. And hold on. Yeah, we're totally in the live demo branch. Interesting. Okay. Yeah, I guess I set this in the starter code and didn't realize it. Because the other side of this is the controller. In the controller for sorry, give me a second. And it would be in the style controller. No, it's in the artwork controller. Yeah, we have to actually have multiple. Yeah, I did. I must have accidentally put it. I meant to do this as like live, but I added this in where you could go ahead and see that. Yeah. I guess it's because I was just doing it based on a single style. And so, so that's why it already worked. Okay, that's fine. So we have that done, which means this is done and we are done. One thing that you may or may not have noticed is that in the list or in the add artwork form, if we look at this list, these are not in any way in alphabetical order, right? And you may remember that I said that you can't just use collections.sort directly on these objects because, you have to do a little bit extra work so that it can actually tap into the properties of the object, depending on which one you want to sort on. And I have the code for this, but I don't have the time. So what I might do is let you guys go, and then I'll keep recording. And I will talk it out and just do it real fast. And then you guys will have it on the recording later when you have more time. But same thing here, right? The styles are not in alphabetical order. It would be really nice if they were. So there's this, thing called a comparator, and there's a fairly easy way to set up comparator classes that work with each of these other classes. And you can compare exactly whatever property you want to decide how to sort things. And on style, we would sort it on name. On artist, we would choose, first name, last name, one of them, right? Okay, so to finish up this part about being able to sort each of these lists here based on properties that are inside their objects, we're going to use a comparator class. And so that's something where we're just going to create some extra classes here just for the purpose of handling this logic that we can then tap into. So I'm going to start here by just creating a class, and I'm going to call it artist comparator. And its only purpose in life is going to be to handle this for us, but we're going to implement comparator interface, and then we are going to make it clear that what we're comparing is the artist class. And implements. Got to make sure I have my there we go. Okay, so we've got our import, and got all that right. Okay, we need to do an override to basically say we don't want the normal comparison to take place. We want to make it very specific. So this is, kind of similar to the way you override a toString method or, the equals or hash code methods. So we want to return a number because the way that it actually handles the sort. But you're going to feed in artist1 and artist2. And so we'll say artist2, and then we just return if we want to do it by last, I don't know, do I want to do it by last name? Yeah, let's do it by last name. Compare to, and then we'll say a2.get last name. And so, this compare to is just, going to take the first one and the second one and compare them against one another and see which one comes first in the alphabet. And then it continues, running through this and comparing everything until we have, a sorted list. And then we're good. So, I have a missing bracket up here, I see. Yeah, okay, so we're good. So let's go ahead and try this out. We're going to head over to our controller for, let's see, get the right one here. Oh, that's not it. Artwork controller, here we go. So we want to take a look at the places where we are actually sending this information into our page. So we're going to be looking at the add page. So I'm going to come down here past details. Here we go. So you'll notice that we've actually got this going on in both places. We've got the style repository, find all, with the styles, variable holding that list being passed down initially into the form, but then we have to pass it down again in case there's errors and we send them back to that form. So we're going to need to do this twice, unfortunately. There might be a better way to do it, but this is not that bad. So I'm just going to paste this in and talk about it. So this doesn't take too long. But I do have to import the collections class from java.util. And we'll have to, of course, import this comparator class we created. So what's happening here is we're doing the same thing here that we did down here for this, selected styles, where we're going to just go to the artist repository, get them all, store them in a list of artists. There's no risk here. We're not working with an ID or an additional piece of information that might no longer be any good. So, we're just going to get them. So we're going to do that. We cast it to a list of artists so that it's in the right type. And then we can sort it. And this is still collections.sort. And you were like, I thought we weren't going to use that. We are using it. We just are giving it a second argument. And that argument is just an instance of the artist comparator class that we created. So that's all there is to it. But because, we pulled this out and did this and sorted it, now this is what we actually need to pass in. So we did the style repository.find all up here. I'm sorry, I'm going to do it for artists. I'm going to make sure I do the right one. So I'm going to replace this with artists so that we're now passing the sorted list, not the raw data that, comes right in from the database. So we'll do that. So that's all there is to it. So I can do the exact same thing here, place this into here, and then copy this. Or I mean, it's easy enough to just do artists. Okay. So now we've done it both here and in the post handler where there's a possibility there's errors and they're going back to the form. So now let's go do the same thing for styles. You'll get to see this again, but it'll go faster because we can just kind of copy and paste and change a few things. So I'm going to create a style comparator class. Okay, so all we need to do here is same thing we did before. We're going to implement the comparator class and give it the style class this time as the type that we'll be comparing. And then I'm just going to paste in what came over from, I already had it. So style, so the only difference here between what we did in artist is that we're using style. So you have style, and then here we're using get name instead of last name or whatever, because name is the property of the style class that we want to compare on. So now we can go back to the controller here and do the same exact thing for style that we did here. So I'm just going to copy this, put that here, say styles and style repository, style, make sure this all matches up, styles. And of course, here we want a new style comparator. And nope, we're good. Okay. And so that is still not right because I still have one more thing I have to edit. No, I should have just typed this from scratch. So we're good there. And then of course, we're just going to change this out to use the sorted list now and pass that down to the template. So let me copy this, put that here, and change this to styles, the sorted list. Okay. So if we do that now, let's restart our app. Head over to here. And I'm going to refresh it. And now we see we have a nice alphabetized list of styles. And if we open this up, this is now clearly alphabetical by last name. Now, it's a choice, whether you think it's easier to do this or do the first name. I don't know. Maybe I did the wrong thing. Maybe it should have been first name, unless I was going to list it like, last name, comma, first name. So it's easier to read through it, but that's okay. These are the kinds of decisions you make as you go along. Okay, so that wraps that part up. And now you know how to use a comparator to, make this stuff actually sortable. So that's the only thing I wanted to talk about. The thing that I did not have time to talk about that's in your book that I knew I wasn't going to have time to talk about is data transfer objects, DTOs. It's talked about in 18.5. The reason that I wasn't worried about it is I was not doing the same kind of work with the many-to-many relationship as Chris was for coding events. And so you needed to know it in this chapter to follow along with his project. You will, however, need it. You don't need it for your graded assignment. So that's why I wasn't worried about it tonight. You do need it as part of learning about authentication for Thursday's class. So I will, talk about it when we get to all the stuff we're talking about Thursday. So I'm not ignoring it. I'm just not going to talk about it tonight. But yeah, and he explains it very well. So if you've done the prep work for this chapter, you and watched his videos, he does go into it. But I will give a little bit of an explanation again when we get into authentication on Thursday. Okay, so to wrap up here for Studio, you are going to work toward completion of your graded assignment. You are now equipped with the knowledge to do part 4, especially given the way that I structured my example project tonight. So there's that. And then, of course, coming down the pike, we've got authentication on Thursday, rest on Monday. That's my last lecture with you guys, because I will not be continuing on with you to Unit 3, because I will be starting with another cohort with Unit 1 in just a few weeks, and be focusing on Units 1 and 2 with them. And then the catch-up classes on the 30th, that's when everything is due, so that you can continue on to Unit 3. So that's what you're shooting for. Obviously, if you get things in earlier, your TAs will thank you for not loading it all on them at the absolute last second. So by all means, be kind to your TAs. I remember what that was like. Okay, so you guys head off to Studio.